somewhat live right now. Let's see. All right, looks like it's working. People are listening. Maybe one person so far. We'll see. They'll gradually make their way into the podcast, but it's always weird. So like sometimes, I'll just usually when I do a stream, I'll just leave it up as is, and I usually don't try to talk about anything of too much importance like right away because no one is here yet, But then it's like once the podcast is up, then there's like this couple of minutes of just like, Jesus, what are they doing? Just get to the damn show.
So we got a vamp. We got a vamp, huh?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to tell like war stories or something?
Yeah, there you go.
What this time is for?
Yeah.
This one time in boot camp. Oh wait, no, not. Probably not a good kind of story for your audience. Let me think. Well, I don't know. Is there anything in the news that you think is particularly relevant to your audience right now, John?
Well, other than like with the the shooting, like we talked about some in text message. I've noticed there has been some gun control talk coming back up, which the big thing in the you're not as maybe plugged into gun culture, of course, even though you're obviously an avid Second Amendment supporter. So one thing that's been going on since Trump has been elected, this kind of interesting, is people are calling it the Trump slump. Have you heard about this at all?
Mm-hmm.
So like basically gun sales were like just through the roof during Obama's administration for obvious reasons, and now that Trump is president, it's like everyone has calmed down with their activism and their gun buying and everything like that, because there's not as much like fervor out there, and everyone's calling it the Trump slump. And but after this recent shooting, it's sort of come back to a certain extent. I'm starting to see a lot more stuff out there on Facebook about guns and banning guns and everything. But I will say it's nice that we don't have a president that's going to get on TV and talk about gun control every time something happens. But
So you think people are like more engaged because of the shooting, though? That's like...
Yeah, it's like people don't care until something happens. At least like the anti-gun crowd, it's almost like they just come out of the woodwork every time something happens.
Right.
Like that, it's not like a steady thing that they care about, which I think is part of the reason why the guns side, the pro-gun side, has been winning to this point, to a certain extent at least, is because we always care about it. We always care about guns. We love guns. We shoot them and handle them and think about them every day, just about, And
provide the ultimate check on gun control, which is widespread, enthusiastic, publicly declared ownership of firearms.
Right. Exactly. It's kind of like, have you ever heard someone say, like typically the person who wins a fight is whoever is the most angry in a lot of situations. I feel like it's kind of like that. It's like we love guns, people that shoot guns, and it's like we have a lot to lose. We have a lot more to lose, but the other side, they don't have guns for the most part, so they just only care whenever it hits the news. To a certain extent,
that's why, like, I don't honestly, man, I don't care about the day-to-day back and forth with this. I think it's a distraction.
Yeah.
Honestly, and like what you do just by understanding that what you're doing is operating at the cultural level, like winning the cultural wars, as some of these people talk about it, can't be about winning debates on the internet or like screeching louder than the other snowflakes. It has to be about changing how people live with a deeper intellectual foundation and a much more meaningful reason. So like I don't know. That's why I've been really good. I started my activism as an anti-war activist, and then ran for office, and then got into media production, and I've been a full-time activist over 10 years, and for the majority of that time, I did a daily news production of some format, some kind of Monday through Friday, cover the daily news. And I am so glad that I don't do that anymore, that I get to have deeper conversations. I get to make real change happen. I get to talk about things that matter.
Yeah.
And it's such you know, an important change in mindset. And I want to, if I may, because I really do have a distinct respect for the conversation that you have around your production and the demographic that you attract in the audience here, is that I always challenge people. This is why I'm a terrible politician. Rather than like make people like me, I'm like, let me make you think, you know, and then I'm the jerk. But no, I want to challenge people in a sense to be better activists, because we're all, and I want to encourage people to think of themselves as activists. That if unless your hunky-dory world is all around you and everything's perfect and you don't want to change anything, you know, and you care about that, you're an activist.
That's true. If you want to see change, then you're technically an activist. Yeah.
And so I would venture to say everyone listening to us, listen to your show, every regular member of your audience is an activist, at least in that sense.
Right.
So when I say challenge you to be a better activist, I mean to be a better person engaged with making the world a better place. And that means being conscientious of our time and how we spend it. One of the things that I realized in my media production, and this is true about social media today too, you know, if most people engage, like what is the reason that they engage with a daily news production? It's to stroke their ego and to reinforce their worldview. This is, you know, the Bill O'Reilly phenomenon, right? Why he struck a chord with so many people, because it made them go, yeah, we're right, aren't we? Yeah, we're so right, you know. And
it feels good to do that. You know, it feels great. And nowadays, because of the internet, it's like, I don't care what you believe in, there's somebody out there that agrees, you know?
Yes. And it's like we're all sitting around blowing smoke up our own butts. That's, you know, a big part of the internet effect and the, you know, and I'm all for, you know, specialization of labor and, you know, people getting more exactly what they need. But the bubble effect that the internet creates for some of us, or that is created as some of us use the internet, you know, like Facebook showing you what you want to see and make you be more engaged. And I'm all for using Facebook. It's a great tool.
Well, and the internet, I feel like the internet rewards those who pander, you know?
Yeah.
And I refuse, you know, to pander. I know that my audience is a heavy gun audience, you know, because I love guns. My dad loves guns. We love guns. But I don't like to pander. You know, like there are so many things that I could do or say that I know would get me more viewers, and I just refuse to do it. I'm gonna say what I think and what I believe. You know, even if
that's a long-term investment in your integrity and your reputation capital.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, it's like, what am I even doing if I'm not being myself? What am I just, you know, playing some role for money or something? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Like there's better ways to make money than content on the internet, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. Like one thing I talk about sometimes that, and you probably would disagree with this, that makes people upset sometimes in my audience, is like, you know, and I know that it's not realistic. It's strictly an exercise. It's kind of, you know, the way I look at it. But so like with the gun debate, the thing that's frustrating is that you've got, you know, extremes on both sides, and you've got this, you know, this no compromise aspect that comes from a very real place. The fact that it seems like anytime, you know, we don't give an inch, just anytime that they, you know, the others, the anti-gun side takes an inch, they want to take a mile. You know, they just are trying to eat away at our rights, just in general, our gun rights especially. And so that's why we, you know, have that mentality of no compromise. But what's frustrating to me is that there actually could be some legitimate compromise if, you know, the pro-gun side and the anti-gun side could sit down and come up with some, you know, reasonable way that we could, you know, work all of this out. You know, it would be the best way to do it. But it's like both sides are so angry, you know. So anyways, I've had this idea I always thought they could kind of get around some of these problems. So one thing that the anti-gun side wants is they want to know who has guns. They want to feel like crazy people are prevented from having guns, which is, you know, not that necessarily realistic of a thing to do. But I've had this idea that what we do is, instead of registering guns or you know, making to where you have to, you know, the government knows what guns you have, there's like a permit, just like a carry permit that people get, that says that you can go and buy certain guns. So it's like, basically, as long as you don't have any violent felonies, the government, it was required to issue a card that says you can buy anything from a squirt gun to a machine gun, and the government doesn't know what you have, how much you have. They just know that you are eligible to buy it, basically, and they are required by law to issue that card to you, unless you have like some type of violent felony on your record, and that would actually keep some guns out of people's hands, because like if I make a private transaction, I can be like, hey, where's your card, and if he doesn't have it, I don't have to sell it to him. But as it is now, it's kind of a it's a little bit of a free for all. But I don't know.
John, if I may humbly say so, I admire your intent and where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And that you're someone who recognizes political reality. You're someone who has deeply cherished principles, but you are making the wrong compromise here, and it's not a necessary one, and it's one that reinforces the monopoly of government to moderate our rights in general, which I think has obvious dangerous consequences that everyone is well aware of in your audience at this point.
Right.
And this is where, if I may switch over to the reason you had me on and get into the area of shamelessly plugging what I'm working on, what I think is so essential to my activism and to seeing humanity move forward. The compromise doesn't have to be on a centrally controlled plan that is imposed on everyone. It can be that we allow each other and at the community level to tailor policies to meet the needs and desires of our communities. This country was founded on the idea of 50, or excuse me, not 50 obviously at the time, but competing states, as the founder said, laboratories of democracy. And I think that core concept is one that is forgotten every time we allow ourselves to be sucked in to these divide and conquer kind of debates at the federal level or the national level. And if we can give up that nationalism and embrace localism, embrace resolving these issues at the community level, I think we're going to see that's the compromise that's going to make everyone happy, where no one has to give up anything or compromise their principles. And this is essentially one of the core reasons why I'm running for president in 2020 on the platform of the peaceful, responsible dissolution of the entire United States federal government, making the states the highest forms of government in America. This ends the fighting. Excuse me?
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's, the way I've kind of looked at it is, I've always thought nationalism is the better way to do things, but could never work probably. And you know what I mean? That's kind of the way I look at it. I like the idea that we can all sort of work together and everything kind of makes sense, but I don't think that that's realistic. So I sort of agree and don't agree with you in a certain sense. Like, it does seem like states' rights is kind of the only way to go at this point, because there's too many people with too many different backgrounds and ideas about how to do things. And yeah, I think you're right. I think localizing things is the only way to go, but I don't necessarily think that the concept of nationalism is inherently bad. I just think it's too like bulky of a feat.
Can you explain, just to make sure we're on the same page with terms, what is nationalism as you're using the word here?
Like the federal government. Is that what you mean by nationalism? A centralized government kind of?
Well, I'm asking you, what do you mean when you say nationalism? When you describe it, you're using it to describe like a system or an ideal. What is nationalism to you?
Well, I've always thought of it, nationalism, to mean that basically there's more of a focus on the federal government than there is on the individual states. That's how I've always looked at it.
So that we should have a central authority that's imposed by a monopoly on force.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, like one big state instead of several states, essentially.
Well, what is a state in this sense then? Well, like, what would you see as, you talk about the United States, I assume you're talking about the 50 separate states
right.
here. When you say the state as an institution that you support, Like, what is the function of the state?
The function of the state is basically just kind of to keep everything running, and because I mean, there's certain things that that it's good if the government can provide, like roads and different things like that. Like I'm not totally against taxes just in general. Like I like that we have good roads and services and things like that in place. And I think,
is there any what services do you think should be socialized as opposed to provided by the free market?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough call. It just kind of depends.
Well, you want roads to be socialized?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that seems to work for the most part.
We couldn't have free market roads. You don't think it's possible to get rid of the government monopoly on roads?
Yeah, I think we could possibly, but I think that there still has to be like I don't know, like a referee. I mean, if everything is completely free market, then whoever the most powerful, most successful entity is can kind of take control of everything to a certain extent.
Well, do you want that person to be able to impose their will by violence, or do you want them to have to like trade and interact with people peacefully?
Definitely trade and interact with people peacefully, but like
then you have to want to take the government away, because the government is what those people use to violently impose their control and maintain their power more.
But see, like the way I look at it, and it's not how it exists today, but the federal government should be like a referee, essentially, a small, not extremely powerful force other than for defense and some things like that. It should just be basically a referee. Laws that the people agree on are a fair way to practice business and private enterprise in the country. And the government acts as a referee, like they represent us as referees to make sure that the businesses, that are providing everything and services and making money are not doing things that are, unfair, that we don't necessarily, I don't have the time to necessarily investigate every business that I buy products from to make sure they're not doing something that's going to poison me or cause some kind of harm.
Sure, but we could do that with like consumer reports kind of stuff in a way that would be more effective than government. I mean, if anything, government corruption is one way that entire process is corrupted. But if I may, could we go back to the referee concept, because that is something that a lot of people think can't be achieved by the free market. But when you talk about a referee, what you're really talking about, if I may, is providing a service of resolving disputes, right? Like when someone does something wrong to someone else, violates whatever those standards are. And we have the best standard is not from government. The best standard of that is the natural law, is the idea that you own yourself, you own the product of your labor. And in order to have a government, you have to compromise that sacred principle in one way or another for the government to be able to take a monopoly on those services. So wouldn't it be better if we had what we have now in dispute resolution and private arbitration in a way that was, like, instead of through government, more directly accountable to the people it's supposed to be serving?
So it'd be like multiple private enterprises that would achieve that purpose, and like maybe they would disagree, who would step in? Would it be like if most of the companies are that monitor, let's say, I don't know, prescription drugs, are saying that.
I don't want to go back. Let me cover the first thing you said there, because that's a really important concept, and I want to draw a currently existing model for this, or point out a currently existing model that would be wonderful in this, and how it's different from government provided services. So, like, think about car insurance, right?
Okay.
If you have an accident, and you cause an accident, you're at fault. You're responsible for that. You don't just go and pay the person out of pocket for all the damages. Your insurance company does that.
Right.
And they are able to resolve the dispute and say, well, how much is it really? They have people who are professionals at going in deciding what is the actual value of the vehicle and the damage and the medical bills and so on, and assessing all of that, as well as covering your damages. So in this one particular realm, we already have a wonderful model where we're able to see companies as voluntary service providers provide not just justice services in making victims whole, but the insurance services and the dispute resolution services as well.
But what if the insurance company screws you over, though? Then you
sure.
need
Well, this is where this gets to the very heart of why the free market, that is peaceful people voluntarily interacting in trade, is superior to the coercive forced interactions of government. Is that when you trust these services to government, you get the current government court system that is not accessible to poor people, that serves the needs of high-powered, high-priced lawyers and their sponsors, obviously, that corrupts and perverts justice and keeps justice from being done and out of most people's hands. Whereas when you have a car insurance company that all of a sudden starts screwing over all of their customers en masse, boom, market forces kick in, baby. That's it. All their customers leave and go to a competitor that's going to behave in an honest and integral way in line with the values of those people. With government, you're going to be lucky. I mean, look, how's it going trying to get criminal justice reform when we have the government in charge of dispute resolution? You end up with the drug war. You end up with custody battles. You end up with divorce court that is a perversion of justice that destroys families. You end up with all of the modern ills of the government court system, and all of that can be avoided.
So you're saying the transparency of private enterprise would kind of help take care of itself just by the free market, people deciding
Absolutely.
where they want to put their money.
And instantaneous accountability that does not happen with government. And then when you see that contrast, you realize every time government has taken on a function and led you to believe that it's been necessary, it's a way to avoid accountability for their actions. And we've been, I mean, I came from your perspective too, man. You know, we all go through this process of believing everything that we're told when we're young to questioning it. And eventually, when you question enough, you get to this philosophical understanding of freedom, and you see how this is a basic universal observation about human nature, that human relations are better off when they don't have violence and coercion in every way possible.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to the practical policy, because this is so now you know my background, now you know where I'm coming from philosophically. But I don't want to debate that, because it would almost be an insult to your audience's intelligence. If they want to go read my book, they can read my book. What I'm talking about now is a practical plan that puts my values in action, that is in line with a lot of other people's needs. So if you're a liberal and you live in a liberal state and you hate those conservatives, okay. You're a conservative, you live in a conservative state, you don't want to be tied to those liberals. How much better off are you if you think that you need to be governed? And I would agree, John, with the basic premise of most people who will disagree with me philosophically at this point, that what I'm presenting as an ideal is not practical for an immediate transition. But if you want a practical transition that avoids what we agree on are most of the problems with big government, the answer is to localize it. Get it down to the states. You eliminate the federal government, people can have state governments that serve their needs. You're going to have pro-gun states, you're going to have anti-gun states, and that's the compromise that we need to be making, is respecting individual communities. If it happens to be at the state level as the next step, that's great. I think we can all see that that's a big step forward. Even if you support the Constitution, even if you support that as a mechanism of governance, you know that it was never intended for a population as big as we have today under the United States of America.
Right, and as diverse as it is too. That's one of the great things about America, but it also causes problems for sure.
Well, when we separate, forcing people together under the same program in this thing called government, we can finally free America.
Yeah. When I say diverse, I don't
to the real founding.
Yeah,
ideals.
and I don't even mean race. I just mean like in people's minds, like the way that they think. Everyone thinks so differently.
Ideology, absolutely. Culture.
Right. Yeah.
You know, without even separate from race.
Yeah,
culture
definitely.
in different parts of the United
Which
States.
I think is our biggest difference, is strictly culture. Yeah. It makes sense to me. Like I said, I I do feel like I love the I'm skeptical of completely abolishing the federal government for a few reasons. But
it's not abolishing. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sorry. It's okay. Okay, not abolishing. Dramatically limiting, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Dissolving.
Okay.
Now,
how do you see the difference between dissolving and abolishing?
Sure, and that's a very important question, because the plan, if to use the slogan that we're developing, is, neutralize, privatize, localize.
Okay.
So neutralize. The first thing I say, I'm running for not president. This whole thing started as a joke, and people started joking about it more and more, and then I started joking about it, and then people started becoming serious about it, and then I was like, wait, there's a way we could actually make this happen.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I like that, not president.
And now people are getting very serious about it. But when I say not president, I mean it, because the platform is to go in and on the first day, like right after being sworn in, go and sign a single executive order that initiates the process in which I resign to be custodian of the federal government, not president of the United States. And this document is a comprehensive legal document that lays out what we do with every agency and who's appointed. And the only power that I would retain as custodian would be to replace those other custodians of each department if they're not following the plan or if something happens to them. So right away, neutralize. It's essentially like the federal government declaring bankruptcy. And frankly, it's been bankrupt for a long time. In a sense, This is just acknowledging reality.
Okay.
So neutralize, that's the first thing. All federal laws are of no effect. So the federal government's role is merely now as a custodian of its existing resources. When I say privatize, my favorite example is the VA. You look at the Department of Veterans Affairs, there's no reason it should not exist. It provides a legitimate service and it helps people. However, it should not be funded by taxes, and it should not be in the hands of bureaucrats. So it's very easy to say we're going to take a portion of the funds from the liquidation of federal government's assets, create an endowment for the VA as a private charity with a board of directors, executive director, chairman, all the typical nonprofit structure, and give every single veteran in America a single voting share to control the VA. And I guarantee you, you put those resources in the hands of veterans, you're not going to have 22 veteran suicides a day anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's huge, yeah.
I love roads. I love the roads. People have, and it's funny that we have this strange hang-up. I bought 10 acres of land here in Ash Fork, Arizona, near Ash Fork, and we have nothing but private roads in our community of Juniper Wood Ranch. It's a beautiful thing. We have easements and right-of-ways where you can't build right to the edge of your property. You have to allow people access to their property, things like that. It's not that complicated. But if we got government out of subsidizing the roads entirely, yes, that would be ideal. But for the time being, to localize control, those are critical infrastructure resources that need to be handled appropriately. You can't just pull the rug out from underneath people. So there is going to be an orderly process of dissolving the Department of Transportation and handing over its resources and facilities and personnel where appropriate down to the states. It's really not that complicated. In fact, really what we're saying here, given the course of the federal government towards what many see as an inevitable collapse, and I'm not certain about that, but we're basically saying, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is we come up with a solution the size of the problem. The hard way is we keep our heads buried in the sand and fight over silly distraction issues, and we ignore the bigger issues, and we wait for, if not a collapse of the government, some failures of the system that are going to really hurt people, that are going to lead to people being more economically destitute than some are, unnecessarily today. It's going to lead to more upheaval and disruption, and we can avoid that.
That's one thing to me that I've thought some about is, like, when it comes to the government as it exists today, is it are they pretending like everything is fine and behind the scenes, like, everything is just screwed? We're in a lot more trouble than we realize, or is it kind of the other way around? Are they making it seem worse than it is for some type of agenda or something that they're after? But they've got things more under control than we realize.
That's really interesting to ask it that way. I've never considered it in those terms, because you could go both ways with it, because you could say that they're always using fear tactics, and the sky is about to fall, and ISIS is about to take over America, and if your kids smoke pot, they're gonna be losers, and things like that. And most of that's bullshit,
right?
But at the same time, there's this counter message of, but we're the government and everything's okay, we've got it under control, just keep voting for us and ignore the problems, ignore the man behind the curtain, that kind of thing.
We've got it under control.
But what I'm concerned with isn't that perception so much as what is the reality of the problem of the bureaucracy of government and the unsustainability of it, and the way that it represents a ripoff. You're just, the Pentagon lost $6 trillion and just has nothing to say about it. Like, hello, right? You don't know that money comes out of your pocket. Welfare at the national level, like the corruption of it. It's just the corporate welfare. Do you not, does that not piss you off enough to at least, I don't know, maybe take a step back from the distraction issues and take a breath and go, wow, I really need to look at the deeper, my own deeper understanding, because we all know somewhere that fighting one law or another is a waste of time. Like, we all know that we're just pacifying ourselves and trying to feel good about things, and stroking our egos.
Depends on how much it affects you. If it's something that really affects you in your personal life, it's like you can't not fight it. I mean, you can, but it's just like, it's like with guns sometimes. Certain things feel like arbitrary battles, but it's like, I don't want to take the chance of not taking them at least somewhat seriously too. So it's kind of hard to know.
I think they got you playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I know. That's it's effective, because you don't know what to believe. It makes it hard, because it's like sometimes I'm just like, everything the government tells me is a complete lie, and they are just going to do. The only, like, if something exists, it's because they wanted it to exist that way. And then other times I'm just like, I don't know, maybe it's just a complete disarray, and it's all a big show, and the stuff we do has more effect than it seems like, and they just want us to believe that it doesn't, or something. It's just, it's hard. It's so hard to know. You can go pretty far down those internet rabbit holes for the answers, but I feel like you just get more and more confused.
Well, this gets back to my original challenge from the beginning of our conversation about being effective. And I used to do media production. And by the way, congratulations for getting on iTunes and continuing the organization of your production. It's really awesome to see.
Thanks, man.
Continue to grow and flourish. But it's especially awesome for me to see, because when I hear about your production headaches, I'm like, yeah, I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I can just do interviews on other people's platform, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
No, but
that is always easier.
But the challenge of, like, is your time being used as effectively as possible? For me, that changed from let me cover, and this isn't what you're doing, because obviously you're doing something at a deeper intellectual level.
I don't know if I call it that or not.
Well, you're not. I mean, you're getting into depth. You're not doing the like, and this happened today, and this happened today, and this happened today, and like,
right,
share this because of my false outrage. You're not playing that game.
Yeah, that stuff is boring to me.
And so, like, I was more in, like, I had barely legit, but I had a TV show for a while, and I was doing 30 minutes 5 days a week, and it was that kind of thing. And like, I can't. When I've challenged myself to think what's really effective, as opposed to preaching to the choir and stroking egos, being able to challenge how people think on a bigger level, to me, it's, I'd rather win converts. And I think, we all have different ways of defining this, but what it means when I say that someone is converted when they've embraced thinking for themselves, right?
Yeah, okay.
That's what I want to inspire and spark and encourage in as many people as possible. my book, that's an inevitable product of it, and it's free. My book is free, by the way. My next shameless plug. Go to
Go for it.
thefreedomline.com. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thefreedomline.com.
And
it's a cool book, man.
Sure,
it comes with a
I'm
sticker,
sure,
I think, right? Or did you just give me the
yes.
sticker? Okay, because I got it on my fridge.
Most people, yeah, and it's a badass looking logo too.
Yeah, man, I like it.
Thank you, 99 Designs. It's yeah, and it's a really, even if you don't come to agree with everything in it, it has to at least challenge your worldview. And I think I can say that with 100% confidence, unless you were already in agreement with most of it, the way it's presented in an irrefutable, rational, logical way, you know, when you're forced to examine your own worldview from that lens, it has to inspire you at some level to more critically examine your own worldview. And when you really embrace creating a worldview for yourself and thinking for yourself, that's what I mean by a convert or a free mind.
I think,
to me, it's
sorry to interrupt, but I think, you know, probably a lot of people have a reaction maybe similar to mine, where it's like, you know, like when I read your book and a friend from talking to you, knowing, you know, the way you look at things, it's like, it sounds great, you know, but it's like, can it work? You know, there's that, and it is such a big change, you know, that we'd have to make, and that's a little bit scary, you know, and but that doesn't mean that it can't work or that it's a bad idea.
So
you know,
a lot of people, I'm kind of a freak in the sense that I have a very strangely philosophical and analytical mind.
A freedom extremist.
And, what's that?
A freedom extremist. Right.
Well, this is the thing, is what I've kind of, in this one dimension, yes, sure, I'll take the label extremist.
Yeah, I'm just joking.
I see those ideals.
Yeah.
I see the extreme.
Right.
And it's not that I'm an extremist. It's that I'm able to think in those terms and look at the underlying patterns and examine things scientifically and you know, make connections that a lot of people aren't able to make and don't care about. And I think humanity needs people like me as much as it needs people like you. And I think you're a lot more like most people. And you're thinking much more pragmatically. And so this has been a challenge for me in my activism, but this is also where I came to the conclusion of localization as a way of moving forward from the current dilemma. So I don't care if you see my ideals or not. You know, I don't care. Because what I come to in the practical next step that we need to take together is localizing government, taking the power away from central authorities. Yeah. That is how we move humanity forward.
And I definitely can agree with that for sure. You know,
well, there we go.
That we need to move in that direction. I think, you know, we might disagree on how far or whatever, but for sure that's the direction we need to move in. You know, one of the things that really got me talking about that was this push for national reciprocity for concealed carry, right? And I found it it kind of put gun owners in a hypocritical position, because, you know, as gun owners, we complain about the federal government a lot for obvious reasons,
but you'd be using the federal government to force yourselves on
exactly.
people, essentially.
I love the idea of being able to go to any state I want and carry a gun. It's awesome. I love that, but I don't love the idea of the precedent that it sets of the government forcing states, you know, like California or New Jersey, that don't want that, to do it. Because if they can force them to do that, then they can force us to do things we don't want, you know, and I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, if I may go to my ideal extreme on that, you know, we take this down to the individual level. You know, I totally support gun control in the sense that everybody sets policy on their own property. If you want to say no guns on my property, cool. Right. You want to frisk everybody who comes in your front gate? Cool.
Because they can choose to leave, you know, if they want.
Yeah, or like, you know, like on my property, my policy is just, I want you to declare all firearms and just let me know, and I encourage you to carry them safely. Right. You know, as a property owner, I just want to know. And so that's my personal gun control. You're on a public road, you're on unclaimed natural space, you are free to do whatever you want, and you set the policy in your own private property. If a community comes together and it unanimously puts their private property together and comes up with a community policy, that's fine. I have a hard time saying at a state level, a state that doesn't want it, but you're absolutely right that it's in the wrong direction to say we're going to force a policy on the entire country.
Right. Yeah, that's a problem. You know, and the same thing with I think that's kind of frustrating is while I'm, you know, obviously very anti-drug war, the whole deal with marijuana legalization, it's just, God, it's a mess, you know, because you've got states that have decided to make it legal, which is awesome, and the federal government is like allowing them to do it, which creates this really strange situation where you have something that's like federally illegal, but the government's allowing them to do that. And as much as I like that states are sticking it to the government, it kind of makes me mad too, because it's like, well, it's not like, you know, the government would let us get away with that with you know, like machine guns or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Something that's regulated. If I wanted to say like, well, we're going to pass a law in my town that says we can all have machine guns and we're just going to shoot machine guns all the time and make them ourselves, you know that the feds would come and crack down on that in a heartbeat. So it's unfair.
It's like mom and dad's, like when your mom says you can't do something, you go, Dad.
Yeah, but he gets to do it. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, you know, and of course the Trump administration is, you know, it kind of seems like they want to bring back some of that stuff when it comes to drug laws, especially Sessions, you know, and it's so frustrating. You know, it's like one step forward, one step back.
Yeah, I'd say 2 forward, 1 back. I would hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully
enough at this point.
1.5 forward, 1 back, maybe.
Well, my understanding of government makes it sort of tells me that what we're seeing with the beginning of the end of the war on drugs. I mean, pretty exciting time to be alive.
Yeah.
Maybe even the end of the beginning. We're settling into the middle of the end of the war on drugs at this point.
Finally.
It's the federal government at this point, the nature of power is such that it's gone from more centralized and arbitrary to less centralized, more decentralized, and having to be more based in a rational public conversation. And so democracy is like a leash on government at this point. And democracy is still unethical in the sense of two wolves and a sheep voting, or a majority imposing its will on the minority, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I would say it's a distribution of power. It's a decentralization of power. It's a step forward from historically worse forms of government. And as a leash on government, it means that it has to sort of pull government along with public opinion. And I think public opinion rejected the war on drugs decades ago, and it's been slowly pulling government along. And government is like you know, a kid giving up a toy as slowly as it possibly can.
Yeah,
and that's why there's the mess. There's no push right now to be like, you know, Melania Trump going like Nancy Reagan.
Yeah,
on us, yeah, we need a war on drugs. Just say no. Like, no, they're not. Like, they can't. Like, to do that at this point would be worse for their credibility. So they're not even going to try.
What it seems like would not be a terrible strategy, at least from looking at it from the government standpoint, would be if they would, like, you know, I would hate to see them shut down legal weed in the places that have passed it, but at least deschedule it, like move it down, you know, and make it basically federally legal, medicinal marijuana federally legal nationwide, and make it, I don't know, like that would be a start, at least, you know, if it was medicinally legal everywhere, you know, and then maybe gradually, you know, they could, you know, bring back like just completely recreational use, you know.
I think all they can hope to do at this point is get it to, you know, be able to tax the hell out of it.
Yeah, which is frustrating that, like, to get something that we deserve as a right, you know, we have to, like, you know, deal with all these crazy taxes, just like with alcohol, you know. But whatever. See, it's a start.
This is, if I may shamelessly go back to this, I don't think that even that fight to get marijuana descheduled, as huge as it is for relieving human suffering and, ending a whole strain of silly government waste, I think we're more likely to convince a majority of the United States voting public to vote to abolish the federal government than to agree on a drug policy or a gun control policy.
Yeah.
And I would suggest this to people who honestly care about gun rights, as you do, not just because guns are fun, not just because they're practical and useful, but as a matter of principle relating to your freedom and self-ownership and the exercise of force and violence in defense of those. That if you really care about those and you really want to put this to the test, you really want to see this flourish, you're going to be much more likely to convince a liberal to abolish the federal government than to adopt your position on firearms.
Right, because it's a more universal concept, because everyone has been pissed off at the government before.
Mm-hmm.
At least I hope. That's a scary person that they. No, I love everything that the government does. So far, so great. Great so far.
Well, the people who are getting enough money to buy their way out of the limitations and headaches of government.
Yeah, that's the problem. And again, going back to the the private versus the government thing, I think that like for a system where, like you said, it's localized, the government, the federal government stripped of most of its power. I think that would be one of the important factors in it working, is to be able to prevent these just massive corporations that are the size of a lot of governments, from being able to impose their will, just from financial means. And I'm a capitalist, for the most part. Like I'm totally cool with people making as much money as they want. I just don't want people to use it to impose their will on other people unwillingly.
Well, this is where defining capitalism properly is so important, and understanding that what we have today is corporatism and not capitalism is critical, because most of what people blame capitalism for, like current monopolies and corporate abuses and environmental pollution even, are not a result of capitalism. They're a result of corporatism.
What's the difference? There's something I'm not too clear on.
Sure. Well, let's just I want to, if I may, then take some time first to explain my understanding of capitalism, how I'm using the word properly, or by my understanding. And this is going first with the dictionary definition, that capitalism is an economic system based on ownership of the means of production. And that means that you own stuff. You can own stuff. You can own tools and factories and vehicles and things that are productive. You can own materials and supplies. But most importantly, and this is what people miss, so there's one thing that people get with this that is not applied universally first, which is that if your ownership of those things is respected, it means that there can't be taxation as theft, and taxation generally is theft. You can make the case for some kind of voluntary taxes, fine, sure, let's not debate the semantics, but when government says pay us or else, that's theft. And if you have that, you don't really have capitalism, because your ownership is compromised. And
you don't truly own it. If you're forced to pay taxes.
Exactly. If you're paying property taxes, you're a renter.
Yeah.
And it's a sad reality that a lot of us are in denial of, but it's critical to understanding capitalism. The next thing is that people don't recognize or understand that implicit with that understanding of capitalism based on the dictionary definition means you also own yourself. You own your body, you own your mind. And this is so critical to the concept of voluntarism, that human relations should be voluntary, because if they're not voluntary, if there's coercion involved, if there's theft or the threat of violence, then it is an involuntary system. Your self-ownership is not being respected. And so you do not have capitalism. And those exchanges, this is fundamental to the conventional, very common textbook understanding of capitalism, is that when you choose to engage in an exchange, it is because you see it as benefiting yourself. If there's no force, everybody involved is involved by their own choice because they see it benefiting them. It's the most benefit for everyone, no losers in free relationships and free exchanges.
the difference between
more
like
impor-
almost like being in a kid-parent relationship versus a mutual
a peer-to-peer relationship.
yeah,
Yes, or a slave-master
yeah,
relationship. And so what's implied in all of this that is not often spoken of, that I like to remind people of every time we talk about capitalism, is that when we say means of production, the ultimate means of production is the individual human being, and therefore you own yourself, your mind, your body, your talents, your capabilities, your passions, everything. That is you. You own that. And if I tell you that you can't smoke weed, you can't put what you want in your own body, and if you do, I'm going to point a gun at you and lock you in a cage or steal some money, then I am violating your self-ownership. If I say you need my permission to start a business, I am violating your self-ownership. If I tell you you need to pay me property taxes on your land, on your house, on your car, then I am violating your self-ownership, and we do not have capitalism.
yeah. So essentially, what we have is like the mafia. The government's pretty much like, I own and control all of this. So if you play nice and by my rules, it's going to be great for you because this is pretty cool. This thing that I've set up for you, but just remember, it's mine at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing that comes out of this is to understand that when you say means of production, you're saying that something is being produced, and the implication of that is that it's being measured. You are measuring production. And we have been fooled. I think we have been deceived into thinking of money or widgets or the bottom line as being the measure of production. But when you recognize that self-ownership is the foundation of capitalism, the ultimate metric of production is your own happiness. This is the individual pursuit of happiness that goes along with this. And capitalism now, in a lot of ways is being analyzed outside the box to include extrinsic factors, implied value, things like that. For example, this conversation, you're not paying me to come on. I'm not going to make any money from it. I do all my business anyway through my nonprofit or the Not Presidential campaign. I'm doing this for the satisfaction of my activism. That's a value to me. That's why this exchange is a great proposition for me, and I'm enjoying myself thoroughly in this intellectual exchange here, right? And getting to talk about things that I care about.
Yeah, and same
that's
here.
Part of what's that?
Yeah, and same here.
Awesome,
I like having you on because we always have good conversations.
Well, see, that's the beauty of the conversations that are made possible with the internet and this, all this new technology and everything. Anyway, don't get me sidebarred on that. So anyway, to corporatism, because I really want to answer this question because a lot of this is I think it's a very critical understanding to make this differentiation. So you've seen this ideal now of capitalism being about, if there's war, if there's violence, you don't have capitalism. At least in that ideal pure form. You can say systematically we have capitalism, but the moment somebody punches somebody in the face in a bar fight, that guy's self-ownership is being violated. His resources are being destroyed, against his will.
Right.
So, to put it back into funny economic terms, right? But the result of the system that we have of government today, when you look at it as an economic system, can be described as corporatism, as in the superiority, or an economic system based on superiority of government-sanctioned corporate entities, which means that you have all of these unseen policies. And you brought up the issue of monopolies before we got into this subject as one of the problems that people see of not having government. Well, what government does is create special economic classes with corporations. And one of the ways they do it that most people don't make the connection with is by limiting competition. And I would bet there are a lot of people in your audience right now, John, who have thought about starting businesses. I bet you have a lot of independent-minded entrepreneurial types.
Yeah,
sure. And I'll bet if they've tried to start a business, they've hit red tape.
Oh,
and I bet a lot of them have thought about starting businesses and given up because of red tape.
Oh yeah, as a small business owner myself, I mean, it's just a nightmare. What's involved? As simple, you would think, as simple as what Dad and I do, we just make YouTube videos. You would think it would be a pretty simple proposition, but it's not. There's all kinds of taxes and things, and crazy, like we have to have basically a CPA on payroll just to help us figure it all out.
How many businesses? Like I have no patience for paperwork. I couldn't start a business if I can figure out a way to pay somebody else to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, that's what you got to do, really.
But then what how many businesses never happen because of that? How many opportunities just don't? How much value has been robbed from humanity?
Yeah, it creates a threshold, kind of like you have to be a certain amount successful to even make it worth it.
Yeah, which means that banks who make business loans kind of get to decide who the winners and losers are.
Yeah.
And regardless of, how much you want to examine the various conspiracies around this, and this is being a conspiracy realist, yes, people work together to screw you over.
Yeah.
To see that there is such a huge unseen cost of all of these policies of corporatism.
Yeah.
That it has to motivate you to go, yeah, we really need to do something about this.
Yeah, and what's one thing that's frustrating is it seems like, the answer that I'm seeing, mostly out of the left. I hate to use those labels, but it's just, I don't know, it's hard not to. But it seems like there's a new push for socialism that I'm seeing a lot, and it's bizarre to me. It seems like a lot of the country now wants some kind of, just look at the Bernie Sanders movement. They want they want socialism essentially, and they want everything to be sort of taken care of so they don't have to think about it.
I try to be optimistic about that when I see those kinds of phenomena. I mean, I look at Donald Trump as a positive thing too, in the sense that most Republican primary voters were so fed up with the establishment that they were willing to embrace Trump,
right.
and
that's why Bernie Sanders had such a following, because he was, anti-establishment on the left, so.
And in a deeper way, he was a measurement of how the left is becoming more philosophically inclined, and I think that's a beautiful thing, because I think those people are much more receptive to a principled message at this point. I still would have, you want to choose between Bernie or Clinton, that's
yeah.
That's an obvious choice.
Honestly, people are gonna bring out the pitchforks, but honestly, if I had to choose between Bernie or Clinton, I definitely would have gone with Bernie. For sure.
Yeah.
Because some of the things that I felt like were really extreme, he wouldn't have actually gotten accomplished.
And he wouldn't have been able to do as much heinous damage economically or in foreign policy as Clinton's machine would have.
Hillary would have just been, oh my God, that was terrifying. That was just terrifying. The idea of her getting in.
When people use the word progressive or even the word liberal, the actual meaning of the word liberal is supposed to be open-minded and forward-thinking.
Yeah.
And conservative is preservation of existing social institutions. Like that's the
right
core definitions of those words, in this modern usage. But there are some liberals who really are that. They only support big government because they don't understand economics or they don't know better. There are a lot of there are two different kinds of liberals and progressives. There are the status quo, big government, really more communist type, Hillary Clinton type, mainstream, whatever you want to call that, and they're not liberal by the word's meaning. They're not progressive. They are mainstream, status quo, big government, nanny state types.
Yeah.
But then I would venture to say maybe even the other half of the American left is truly liberal and truly progressive in the sense that we need to be reaching out to them and enlisting them as allies.
Right.
And sometimes you might not ever win them over on gun control. Let them have their community where they have strict gun control policies and let them suffer the consequences and deal with that, fine. But in the bigger quest of moving forward, of localizing government, those people especially need to be seen as allies. And I am a huge fan of both the Bernie Trump and the Donald Trump and the Bernie Sanders phenomena of reflecting these beautiful, broad social changes that we're going through.
I find myself in agreement with liberals all the time, especially on, rights issues, and things like that. I do think that they are more progressive when it comes to things like the drug war and gay rights and, different things like that. But then, that's why the libertarians exist, because it's sort of like supposed to be supposed
Best
to be
of both worlds,
you know?
baby.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we are.
Yeah.
And by the way, I am running for, or I'm planning to run, to put it in a way that doesn't incur any legal liability for me at
Yeah.
this point, right? I intend to run for the Libertarian Party nomination for president,
Okay.
and I'm very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In fact, I can give you a scoop right now. You want a little bit of a scoop
Yeah,
with
man.
our campaign?
do
We
it.
just determined this as a new strategic initiative to bring back the Dallas Accord, which was an agreement near the founding of the Libertarian Party in 1974 to make it the party of big tent, smaller government. And at the time, it was an informal agreement. And we are organizing right now to get delegates, to get people involved with the Libertarian Party by going to their county meetings, starting now, becoming national party members. You got to pay $25 to be registered with the National Party. You don't have to pay that to be involved, but if you want to be a delegate, you do. And we're encouraging people who want to help with this effort. We are going to be putting forward, I don't want to make promises here, but shortly we will be putting forward a formal Dallas Accord, as in a new proposition, a motion to be submitted for the 2018 convention for the Libertarian Party to make it the party of big tent, smaller government again.
That's
and
cool.
Be inclusive of everybody who wants localization, decentralization, respect for individual rights, total voluntary societies, all of those things, and bring people together to really unite us against the common enemy. And I don't like to use terms like that, because in the bigger picture, this movement has to be about elevating all of humanity. The best movies aren't the ones where they defeat the enemy. The best ones are the ones where they convert the enemy, and the enemy apologizes and says, oh yeah, I really want to be one of you guys all along.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate victory. That's really what we're doing. But yes, in a political sense, to unite against the common enemy that is the federal government.
I feel like Independence Day would have not been as good, though, if that had happened. The movie, not the reality. I think that's awesome. I would love to see the Libertarian Party get more traction. And I think too, there was something that was going around. We may have talked about it on the last time you were on, or I don't know, something. But there was something that was going around. Maybe it was a Gary Johnson thing, where it was like this test online that you could take, and like all these people were finding out that they were libertarian and didn't realize it.
That's usually the case. When you understand that libertarianism is based on respect for the individual human will, what you want. It's like everybody has an individual will. Everybody wants that will to be respected. Nobody wants that limited by force from somebody else. It's like the most essential. It's ethics applied to politics based on, a universal quality of the human condition, that we are all independent, beautiful creatures with our own will that want to thrive in the world and in our own way, and that's what brings people together.
Exactly. I feel like two of the big things that still kind of hang a lot of people up is guns and abortion. Those two things are still, like there's a lot of people that agree on all the other social issues and things, but that still fight over those two things. And
I think technology, if we got technology out of the way, if we got government out of the way, technology would render both of those issues almost completely irrelevant as political issues.
I think that's true too. Especially with guns, that's one thing, this idea that you can even control guns is very, very quickly disappearing, especially with 3D printing technology, and stuff like that. And look, we've seen people acquire guns in places where there's strict gun control. Not that I have to convince you, but it's just I think that argument is going to get harder and harder as time goes on and technology increases.
We're also going to have Star Trek phasers.
Exactly.
Pretty soon. If you're in a practical sense, if you carry a firearm for self-defense, you'd be better off if you had a phaser that would work to disable someone if you hit him in the pinky toe.
Yeah, it's true.
When we have something that makes guns obsolete for personal defense, in that sense, we'll have something that's safer and more effective, and everybody will have one because there will be no objection.
Right. I still hope we can still have guns for fun, though. The old school guns.
Exactly. And then there's no there will be you might have more restrictions on guns in public spaces or in shared spaces, but then there would be no restrictions whatsoever on guns for any recreational use on private property, because no one would care to try to restrict that at that point.
That's true. If a gun can like put you out, let's say it puts you out for like 2 hours or something, you hit them almost anywhere, and maybe there's like a huge penalty still for like a big penalty for shooting someone that didn't deserve it or whatever, you know, because like, right. You just put me out for 2 hours because you thought it was fun, you know. But like, but that would be amazing, you know, because they're obvious, you know, like the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, but some of the disadvantages of guns as they exist now is, as you know, bullets penetrate pretty seriously, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, if you get involved in a shooting, there's a chance that bullets could go through the right person and hit the wrong person, but it's still better than letting some crazy gunman, you know, run amok, though.
Well, you know, I'm not allowed to own a firearm anymore, but when I did, whenever I carried, I would never carry a firearm without also carrying pepper spray.
Oh, that's interesting. I used to carry when I worked security, but not since.
I would, because I would, if I'm going to come out and say I am ready to apply deadly force in defense of life and limb, I also want to say I'm not jumping to that. You know, I'm ready to pepper spray someone if I can use that intermediary escalation in a way that causes no long-term damage.
My only reservation for pepper spray in like a civilian capacity would be that, technically speaking, so like if you, let's say that you got involved in some situation with someone else that was escalating, and they were posing a threat to you, but it was not a lethal threat. Let's say they were going to fight you or something. You maybe felt
like a belligerent drunk person.
Yeah, like you maybe felt like they might, you know, pick up a rock or something, but you know they hadn't gotten to that point yet. If you pulled out that pepper spray and sprayed them or acted like you were going to spray them, technically they could pull out a gun and shoot you, because pepper spray, while non-lethal, it does incapacitate you, and while you're incapacitated, that person could do whatever they wanted. You know, that'd be the only thing. So, like, I would want to, but you know, if you have your gun handy,
it's still crossing a serious line.
Yeah.
But if you use the pepper spray right, I mean, have you ever been pepper sprayed?
Yeah, it sucks. It's rough.
Like properly pepper sprayed?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends on what you mean. I mean, like, it was whenever I took the class. I mean, just right across the eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're not shooting anybody.
Yeah, not accurately, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're right to point out that pepper spraying someone is, you know, on a similar scale as drawing a gun or shooting someone, because it is a serious application of force that would warrant lethal defense.
Yeah. But of course, you read the situation, and you know.
But no, I'm talking. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking more about. You know, I'm not talking about someone's trying to kill you. I'm talking and like use pepper spray before your gun. No bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm saying that there are times when you would draw a gun and go, oh crap, I hope I don't have to shoot. But if you could draw pepper spray, you'd be like, dude, get the hell out of my face, you drunk idiot, go home.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be the de-escalation, and you wouldn't have to have the legal liability of drawing a firearm.
Well, and one thing I think too that some people don't realize, that I didn't realize until I learned it from my experience being an armed security guard, you know, a gun is no magic tool. You know, like people who are experienced criminals and have been in and out of jail, they know the rules. They know what's going to get them shot. So just pulling a gun on someone doesn't automatically get them to do what you want them to do. You know, like they understand. So like you definitely you know, have to be careful, because I mean, if someone's even being threatening towards you, you pull a gun, you know, they may know you're not going to shoot them. They might take that gun from you. You know, so definitely, you know, definitely gotta. You know, if you're going to carry a gun, definitely got to be informed. That's for sure. But again, you know, that's something I argue with people a lot too. Is they're like, well, you know, police have guns because they have training. You know, well, sometimes civilians have more training than police because they actually care about guns and really are interested in it.
A lot more.
Yeah, exactly. But then also, even if you don't have training, I don't think training should be necessarily a requirement to be able to protect yourself. You know,
right.
I mean,
no, it's like, well, the idea is, unless it's on private property or your own property, you set your own standard.
Yeah, definitely. Or even, you know, this is I don't know. This is probably like controversial, but even I would never carry a gun when I was impaired ever. I wouldn't do that. But that's another thing is
Who
like
decides how impaired you are?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you were in your house and you've been drinking, maybe you weren't just totally wasted. Even if you were wasted, pretty drunk, if someone breaks into your house
by force is not diminished.
Yeah, I mean, someone breaks into your house with a gun, you got to try to defend yourself. But the court would probably, you'd probably get in trouble for that, even if you were justified.
No, it's like trying to legislate morality or trying to make hate crime laws or something. Like it's worse to shoot someone if you're drunk than if you're sober. Like no. That's crap. It's just your response. Like, and the disadvantage of being drunk is if you screw up, that's on you. If you shot justifiably and you shot the right person, no problem.
Yeah, that's all that should matter.
If you're drunk or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all that should matter at the end of the day. One thing. There was a question I actually had written down. I was going to ask you about because you talk about people like waking up or being awake a lot, and it's something I wanted to clarify. Get your clarification on what exactly does that mean to you? Because I think it means different things to different people. And I was just curious what that means to you.
Yeah, a lot of people in the libertarian movement use that to describe becoming a libertarian. How did you wake up? Yeah. And I've actually railed against the term, and I think I started using it because it was the most common term that people were using, and I think it's really unnecessary and insulting. And I try not to use it without a little more conscientiousness, because if you use it the wrong way, you're saying, well, if you don't agree with me on everything, you're not woke.
It can be condescending.
Yeah. And I do think that's I really do try to see, and it's challenged me to embrace a much more broad freedom movement. That's not just people converting to my worldview, but people starting to think for themselves, people enjoying the deeper benefits of the technology available to us today and the information on the internet. So I do think there is an awakening. I don't think the term is completely useless. I do think it is important to understand that there is an awakening happening going on, that it is a raising of awareness.
Right.
And so I hesitate. I'm careful in my usage of that. So I like to, if you want to pin me down on, what do you mean? I try to say, I use it as broadly as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think sorry, go ahead.
Hmm? I'm often tempted to say, well, if you don't understand what government is, at least you're not woke, But I don't talk to people like that.
Yeah. I've always kind of looked at it because there is kind of a feeling that you get. And I think there's different levels of being awake or whatever, depending on how you look at it. But there was a point for sure where it was kind of like even just being aware of a lot of new information. Not that you necessarily have an answer. But just being aware of a lot of new information does give you kind of a feeling of like, oh, okay, this is like, I'm kind of waking up to some new thing now, kind of.
I'm more concerned with how using that term does us a disservice.
Yeah.
If we think of ourselves as awoke and we want more people to be awoke, it ignores the fact that for most of us, the awakening process is a long, drawn out one. Like for me, I can say, it really was like 10 years, of an intellectual transition for me of giving up my statism. But for some people, it does happen in a weekend, and it does happen with reading a single book. And that's why it's kind of deceptive, because we want to mythologize it. Like I like to ask people, how did you wake up? As an open-ended question, because it invites them to talk about whatever their own process of awareness raising has been. And I've heard people tell me, dude, Adam, I just spent like an entire weekend watching your videos and checking your sources and, double checking you against Wikipedia and stuff. And I was at the end of it like, holy crap, I just came out of it all at once. And there are people who get that experience, but I think that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I woke up when I went to the Rock Music Festival.
Yeah. I mean, I would wager there was a little more to it than that.
Yeah, it's one thing that Yeah, it does annoy me when people use that term "wake up" as like you said, or the term "red pill," to mean like,
Yeah.
have you finally come to terms with the fact that what I'm saying is right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. The red pill analogy has been really owned by the, I guess the MRA, the Men's Rights Advocacy Movement, or the MGTOW movement. Have you been red pilled on that? And
No,
that's kind of that kind of diminishes, like, and I'm, not to comment at all on any dynamic of that content, but it kind of diminishes even the concept of the red pill in the Matrix, which is like, you're in the Matrix and then you're out of the Matrix.
Because that was like a very clear thing.
Yeah.
Like you wake up and it's clearly a very different environment that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
so, I don't know. I'm all. I just want to be careful and respectful in using that term as much as possible.
Like, speaking of the Matrix, what do you think about do you ever think about this kind of stuff, like the concept of like simulation theory?
Like we could all be living in a simulation.
Yeah, we're like in some game, and I'm not necessarily like. I'm kind of optimistic about it. Like that could be a cool thing. That could be a good thing.
Well, I think when I was about 13, I went through like a couple weeks where I thought about that stuff nonstop, and then I realized, well, if you think about it being a game too much, you're pretty much guaranteed to lose. So I better stop thinking about this.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it's a fun thought exercise, but
that's true.
If it is, got me fooled, might as well enjoy the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. It's whether it is or isn't a simulation. It's relatively very real, so it doesn't really matter.
It's like, okay, I get it. It's a possibility. I'm prepared. If like an alien drops out of the sky and the world just sort of evaporates and I'm standing on a little platform somewhere, it won't totally blow my mind. I'll be ready for that.
I'll be like, okay, I thought about this before. Yeah, I can handle it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is, I feel like there's a point in my life where I went down so far down the internet conspiracy theory rabbit hole that I think I put too much importance on certain things being true or not true, that there's really no realistic way of knowing the answer to. I think sometimes that can almost be, I think a little bit of that is good because it opens up your mind and your perspective, but I think to a certain point it can be kind of toxic, I don't know. That's just how I look at it.
That's been an important part of my, mellowing out over 10 years of activism, is to develop a kind of mindfulness at that level, a conscientiousness of where my mental energy is directed and how I'm enjoying life moment to moment. And it's been a good practice to foster, to nurture in myself.
Because, a lot of the people that I've known that are hardcore conspiracy theorists are not happy people.
Oh, yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So
we don't have to name names.
Yeah, no. No, we don't. We know several of them. Even like the thing with, like I've always been into aliens. Always have. I love the concept. Watched that show Ancient Aliens back in the day until I kind of got bored of it. And but even that, it's kind of like, if there are aliens working with the government or whatever, I don't know. I mean, you see these articles all the time that's like, the government's about to reveal, there's aliens or whatever. It never happens, of course. It's kind of like, you know what? If that's going on, it's at a much higher level than I'm even close to. So, I just try to make it fun. I don't worry about it too much. I don't know. Interesting thought, though. It's kind of it would be nice to know that the government is screwing us over for good reasons.
Nope, it's aliens.
that they're like protecting us from something. It's a nice thought, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I only object to your interest in aliens if it turns into an excuse for government.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. One thing I do think, though, that there, aside from that, there is a certain element of like there could be some things that the government does that seem worse than they really are because of just details or information that we just don't have. about the subject. Like I've used Iraq as an example, which you were actually there, so this is probably going to sound really stupid to you, but and again, this is kind of an exercise. This is not like something I'm like, this is my point I'm sticking to that I'm sure about or whatever.
Okay.
But with the weapons of mass destruction thing, it's possible that there was some reason that we went to Iraq that has never been declassified. So to the public, it looks like this incredible waste and terrible idea, but only because they can't declassify certain information. Now, again, I don't necessarily believe that.
Lose $6 trillion. They had to bribe the aliens to leave us alone.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly, because there was some kind of Stargate or whatever in Iraq, and
Dude,
I'm not saying
that's
that.
the worst kind of statist wishful thinking, because look, and I don't mean about that example in particular, because it's possible.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that I agree. Think that that's true. I'm just saying I think it's possible that things like that could happen, not necessarily with aliens, just things that the government does. There's certain things they can't declassify, like we don't have all the information.
But look at the historical trend, dude. Like, so here, I'm gonna just like this. It's almost like you're creating a fantasy to make an excuse for government, and I get it, because anytime you see such a waste or a loss of resources and lives, you want to think that it was for a good reason. But just look at the historical record. Every time governments reveal secrets, it's not, oh yeah, we were the good guys all along. No, it's always things were worse. We were bigger assholes than you could have possibly imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, like Tuskegee, the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yeah.
I could keep going and going and going.
It's kind of like the thing.
It's
like the thing you do.
We were
with
the good guys.
It's like the thing you do with your parents. You do something bad, and they don't find out about it, and then you tell them years later because they won't be as mad.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
That's one of government's games.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just, I like to think things out. Who knows? I mean, it's probably happened at some point. But yeah, you're right. I mean, for the most part, it's sometimes worse than we thought. But I don't know. That had to be crazy being right in the now. Yeah, that was something else I wanted to ask you. So we were talking about waking up earlier, and you are a veteran of the war in Iraq. At what point over there did you realize, or was it kind of a gradual thing that hey, this is wrong, or something's going on, or did you ever feel like it was the right thing to do?
Yeah, dude. My answer to this is only important to explain how slow my process was, and I got to go back to growing up with my mom getting the choice in the car of listening to either oldies or classical music.
Yeah.
And I always wanted oldies, so I got the spirit of the music of the 60s embedded in my brain from a very early age. And that's what made me a libertarian, but at first really just in name only, and I did not understand the philosophy, so I still was driven by propaganda and insecurity into enlisting in the Marines and volunteering to go to Iraq as someone who called himself a libertarian, which now I realize is really kind of pathetic.
Did you join up after 9/11 or before?
No, I joined before 9/11.
Okay.
It was 99 when I was a junior in high school. Actually, I enlisted and then went to boot camp in 2000.
Okay.
So yeah, and I was in a reserve unit, in a reserve Marine Corps artillery unit. I volunteered to go to Iraq, and I actually went. I was in college, and I went to the day of student walkouts, the protests before the war, because I thought, not as a matter of principle, but just that this is a bad idea. This is not going to add up. This is not going to be a net gain for the United States.
Yeah.
But I was against the invasion and for the occupation, in the sense that I thought being there after was cleaning up our mess and responsible foreign policy and doing our best to rebuild some stuff. And so while I was there, I volunteered to be in civil affairs. I transferred to an active unit that was going from my reserve artillery unit to an active civil affairs unit, and I thought that we were going to be the tip of the spear in rebuilding Iraq, and I defended that idea for a long time. I even wrote a letter to the editor for Time magazine or something saying, "Oh no, look at this! You're like, is there?" They had this number section that said, "Oh look, they're only doing these many projects." I was like, "No, look, we've got all these projects," and we were at a very small scale, and I didn't see the big picture, so I still thought that part of what we were doing was worthwhile. Part of the only real disillusion for me that I got in real time was that what we were doing was an occupation, not a rebuilding, because as a civil affairs team with an area of responsibility, the infantry unit that had that area of responsibility were the ones in charge, and we were like a little add-on to them. And so that was a major disappointment for me with my tour. But it wasn't. I volunteered to go back. You know, it wasn't until later that I was able to put it in perspective. I was pretty slow, so I brought a pistol back from Iraq the first time as a souvenir, and it was really cool. It was a Beretta 9mm knockoff.
Yeah, I remember talking about that. It's neat.
Yeah, with the So I got in trouble for that, and instead of going back to Iraq, I sat at Camp Pendleton for a year, and I had to be disgruntled when I got out to really start questioning things. Like I'm not that bright. I'm not that open-minded. I'm not, I'm kind of dense and slow and committed to my ideas, and I think things out very, very thoroughly. And I'm, relatively, or at least in the past, I think now I'm much more open-minded. But in the past, I was pretty slow to change my worldview, maybe more out of fear of change and a thorough intellectualism. Like I really wanted to be right about everything. I really wanted to be confident in my positions and my worldview.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the Marine Corps, it was really driven by being pissed off that led me to start questioning the war and questioning my experience, and then going, wow, there really is, some deeper corruption behind all of this. And that's when I joined Iraq Veterans Against the War and got started, fell over backwards into full-time activism with that while I was in D.C. for grad school. And that was what led me to question the war, and then being surrounded by all those lefties in the anti-war movement that was sadly revealed by Obama to be more of an ideological anti-Bush movement, forced me or challenged me. We had a lot of good conversations, and I was like, I know you're wrong, I just have to prove it.
Yeah.
And that's what got me to a deeper level of capitalism conceptually and economics and the philosophy of liberty. So
yeah, and I totally understand that. I mean, the propaganda is, thick. It's
Fox News was not conservative enough. They had to pull it in the chow halls and put on the Armed Forces Network for us.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. It's funny because I remember, because I guess I was probably still in high school at the time. I remember, the Iraq Veterans Against the War. I remember them being on the news. I probably saw you on the news.
Yep.
When I was a kid in high school, obviously didn't know who you were or anything at that time. And I was what?
How old are you?
I'm a 29. I was born in '88.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm only 6 years older than you.
Okay. But I do remember that when I was still living at home. So it was either like right after high school or being home from college, something like that.
It makes sense.
But I remember thinking though at the time, like, what are these guys complaining about? You know what I mean? Just like a bunch of complainers, Go to war, you pussy, like that was kind of, that was sort of how, I grew up watching war movies, John Wayne and all that kind of stuff. So I sort of had, I had that mentality, and it wasn't until I really got, and also I didn't have good internet. I had dial-up when I lived at home, so like, so I guess you could say high-speed internet is what woke me up.
Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful to hear.
Yeah. So I went off to college, and then I had, I was alone with high-speed internet, so then that's really how I, I started looking into that kind of stuff more. And I think as everyone does, I think like 9/11 is like entry level, things aren't what they seem, and I got into that, and then that's sort of got me more into the stuff with Iraq or whatever, but yeah, it's just propaganda is very effective. It's why they do it,
It's funny. The movie that made me want to enlist was Full Metal Jacket.
Really?
And that's supposed to be an anti-war movie.
That's funny. Yeah, it's a great movie though.
Spoiler alert! Close your ears for 30 seconds. Guy, when I saw it, I thought, hey, a challenge that can drive a man to suicide. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Arlie Ermy, I've met him a couple of times. He's an awesome dude, though, I have to say. He's cool. He's a great actor. I heard a story about Full Metal Jacket. Apparently that they hired someone else to play the drill sergeant in the beginning.
Yeah, he walked on and because
I think
to coach him.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Do you want this job?
Yeah, it's like, no, you do it like this, and they're like, wait a minute, how about you just do it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. Well, I guess we could, if you want to, we're getting close to time. We could take some questions if you want to do that.
Sure. I thought you were going to be jumping in with questions way sooner.
Well, I didn't want to distract too much. But yeah, if people want to ask some questions on the live chat, there's a delay, but they can hop in and ask some questions. I've been seeing a lot of stuff about Sandy Hook and stuff on there. That whole conspiracy. I don't know what your take is on it, but mine is literally as simple as maybe. But it's kind of a waste of time to try to.
Don't care.
Yeah,
don't care,
exactly.
Don't care.
Exactly.
The rabbit hole that doesn't lead anywhere.
Right. Exactly. And it's just gonna make people angry, and for good reason. It was just a terrible thing that happened. Whatever,
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad people looked into it. I'm glad things are questioned and critically examined. Right. But even then, in the big picture, don't care. Don't care.
Yeah. It's kind of a trap in a way, I think.
It doesn't make government legitimate or any more legitimate or any less legitimate one way or another.
Yeah.
Government's still illegitimate.
I don't know if you can see the questions or not. Someone asked you if you regret your military service.
No, I don't live with regret. I do think it was a failure of my intellectual integrity to think that I was joining to make the world a better place and knew that having not done the research at the time.
Yeah.
But I embrace my failures.
Yeah, I try to do that too, because the thing is, if you like who you are, then all of the things, mistakes and accomplishments, all made you who you are. So.
Yep.
That's when I look at it.
And it challenged me, and I can look at the direct immediate positives from it, and how it gave me attention to detail. And an appreciation of a certain standard of work ethic and sacrifice and teamwork, and certain got to travel to the other side of the world.
Yeah, I've always cause there was a period of my life where I wanted to join, and part of part of it is I like guns, and I like the that's how they get you, the adventure,
Mm-hmm.
And the danger of it, and the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff, because I was a sports guy, so.
Gun control is just a trick to get you to join the military because you'll think that they've got better toys to play with.
Exactly. That's a new conspiracy we need to start. Yeah, free ammo too, Well, your tax dollars sort of pay for it. I've always thought it's strange how, when you work for the government, it's like the government pays you, but then you have to give some of it back for taxes.
Yeah. So, hey, I've got the live show up now, but I don't have there aren't any comments loading for me for some reason. But ask away, man. Like I told you before we started this interview, that we would, I guess it's more of a conversation than an interview, but that what I wanted you and your audience to walk away with was an intellectual confidence in what I'm doing with this presidential campaign and this platform of dissolving the federal government. So I would especially appreciate if there are any questions about the platform or the policy, because it sounds like kind of a glib thing to just say, oh yeah, we're going to dissolve the federal government.
Right.
And obviously I've put a lot of thought into this. I'm getting ready to write a book that explains the entire platform. Pretty soon here we're going to be assembling in the bigger process. We're going to be assembling a legal team to write out the executive order as a very detailed, comprehensive legal document. Haven't done all that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And we've given a lot of thought to this campaign and to all of the different alternatives and different ways that we could go about achieving a more free society. And there are a lot of things that I've considered that I've gone into this. And so I want people to challenge it at that level if they like.
Yeah, that makes. I like that you're trying to be very transparent about what you're
Yep.
doing. I think that's
Absolutely.
awesome, and that's definitely something that's missing in the government in a huge way. And hey, here's a chance for everyone to ask a presidential candidate a question.
3 years in advance, too.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Once you become president, you got to come back on the show. And we'll talk about the aliens.
Yeah. Well, hey.
And time travel. All the secrets they're keeping from us.
Dude. Well, first of all, you're not going to be able to do it as president because I'm only going to be president for like. I haven't figured out the exact ceremony, but it's going to be something like 30 seconds or 30 minutes, and then it's done.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, one of the benefits of dissolving the federal government is no more secrets. Dismantling the NSA and the FBI and the CIA are going to be relatively substantial administrative processes. Yes, you can shut down most active operations. I mean, you can't, again, you want to review things and make sure that there's nothing that's too sudden. But for just handling the data and the resources that those agencies control, there is going to be a huge process. But the general principle that I can absolutely commit to this early in the campaign as part of the platform is that if there is information being held by the federal government that has that releasing would not violate any individual's privacy, it's going to be released. All the patents, all the secrets, all the historical stuff, all of that done. There will be a first release of documents that is just going to be a huge. Oh crap! Did I just get that from Trump? There's going to be a huge data dump that comes out, towards the beginning of this, as we just say anything that meets these criteria, done. It's published on the internet.
They're going to put WikiLeaks out of business.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, hey, that's there you go. New campaign slogan. We'll put WikiLeaks out of business.
Yep.
No more secrets. And then there will be an extended review process for, what other data can be released, what stuff, out of respect for personal privacy can be released after certain things have been redacted, things like that. But generally speaking, no more secrets. All of that comes out, and I'm very excited about that. And everybody who cares about conspiracies at all, hey, we're going to find out once and for all. We're going to set a lot of records straight.
Yeah, but maybe have like a tour where everybody can just kind of go walk through the White House,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, thanks. See, you're like, we need to hire you. You're a step ahead of me on all that. But no, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is that I would probably set up shop in the Pentagon and turn the White House into a museum right away. The Capitol would be turned into a museum. The rest of the federal buildings in D.C. can be put to some other use. But yeah, maybe the CIA building could be turned into a history of the CIA building, and I think that would be an appropriate use for it.
Yeah, all the aliens that have been working for the government, they'll be out there panhandling, on the streets.
Well, they're selling cotton candy to the kids,
There you go. Yeah. Someone asked, they said, "Are you fully intending on winning or just sending a message?"
I am absolutely running to win, and to give you a picture of the timeline with this. Our goal in 2018 and going in is to first set the stage by making the Libertarian Party the party of big tent, smaller government. The next stage in this is winning the nomination, and in 2020, bringing a unifying message that's still grounded in libertarian principles to the mainstream. And the goal for 2020 is to just get in the debates. And if that's that might be out of our control. I understand the Commission for Presidential Debates is a corporation controlled by the two major parties. Blah blah blah.
I was hoping Gary Johnson would have made it last time.
Right, and the party now since then has won some lawsuits, so I think we're actually in a really good position to get in the debates.
Okay.
But the bigger goal would be to get about 10% of the national vote. And what that does is plant the flag on this platform and this idea. And then every time the federal government screws up between 2020 and 2024, I'll be the guy raising my hand in the back of the classroom saying, hey, if you had voted for me, that agency wouldn't exist right now.
Yeah, remember me?
And, excuse me?
Yeah, it'd just be like the guy that says, remember me?
Yeah, hey, you could have voted for me, remember?
Yeah.
And I believe that when we win on this platform, and I want to be clear about this not being about me. If someone better comes along who's credible to run on this platform, I would happily drop out and ask for a job in their campaign organization. Until then, unfortunately, you guys are stuck with me on this platform. But the goal would be between 2020 and 24. Then we make this a national movement, and in 24 we can win with an overwhelming majority, because you're not going to win with 34% of the vote to 33, Republican, 33 Democrat. It's going to have to be more like 60-70% of the vote, because they're going to steal every vote they can against us. We need to have an overwhelming majority and such a consensus on this that the federal government shouldn't exist anymore, that it is unobjectionable and no one can stand against it. That's what it's going to take to win.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I as much as I would pray for a black swan kind of phenomenon between now and 2020 that would allow us to win then, I think that in a sense, people do need to prepare for this. They do need to be ready to form the mechanisms at the community level that make government less relevant in the first place. We need to really reconsider what it means to be American, and separate the glorious traditions and values and people and history and everything else of this country from the government, and say, no, this is good for America. We don't need a federal government to have an identity as Americans, for that to be worth something. I think that's a really important process that everybody has to get comfortable with, and say, yeah, America is going to be defined by things better than our government from now on. And that's huge. So
and maybe other countries will follow suit too. That's another thing too. It's a worldwide thing.
Absolutely. In fact, we already have a candidate who's looking into running on this platform eventually in Canada. The former chair of the LP there, Tim Moen, is excited about this.
That's cool.
I'm going to be doing a tour of Europe next fall. This winter, we're doing Cuba and China.
That's awesome.
I've got my book translated into about a dozen languages now by volunteers. I'm working on releasing a few more. We've got some on our website already under translations. So yeah, I think when people see this is America leading the world towards freedom again.
Yeah.
Where the American Revolution was a huge step towards freedom. The idea that now we can localize government down to the community level, that's the continuation of the American Revolution, that is the furtherance of the ideals. When Thomas Jefferson said we should have a revolution with every generation, and we're behind if you haven't noticed. But this is, a huge opportunity that is not to be taken lightly, and I do not expect to win in 2020. And everybody who supports me has to be like, "Oh, I can't believe you said that." But no, I want to be realistic and honest and transparent. We are running to win. We are running a very serious campaign, and we will be ready to win in 2020. But I do believe that 2020 is setting the stage for 24. And hopefully not necessarily, but if necessary, 28 or 32 if it takes that long.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
awesome.
will run. I am committed to running until the federal government ceases to exist one way or another. And I can't promise that it's going to happen this way. I have to say it's probably just as likely that we have a widespread secession movement first, and I would be very happy with that.
Yeah. What do you think about as far as like strategy, just in the Libertarian Party in general, aside from just yourself, like maybe like, I don't know, playing the game a little bit, like getting someone that, whatever the biggest celebrity that you can find, to run on the ticket or something like that. I don't know what other celebrities there are that are very libertarian, but sometimes it works. It gets attention,
Well, one of the unfortunate things about celebrity culture and the nature of what makes someone a celebrity in the conventional sense, although I will say the internet is somewhat shifting this, is that they appeal to the mainstream.
Right.
And they choose to put their personal beliefs or practices or whatever that are outside of mainstream taste to the side in order to be a celebrity.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. Yes,
because
there
they'll
are some that are
lose their audience possibly. Yeah.
Well, they might have, you see people get a conscience later on in their careers and being able to come out more about their true beliefs when they don't care anymore about having that broad public support. They want to do some good in the world and put their opinions out there. But by and large, the reason they're celebrities is because they're willing to put that aside.
See, like if Ozzy Osbourne was a libertarian, You know.
I didn't even know that.
No, I
And
don't know that he is or not. I'm just saying if he was,
Oh,
you know, he could win maybe. I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, like I said, when I say someone better coming along, if that means that they're a more capable candidate for whatever reason, I'm all for it. But until then, Woody Harrelson is out as an anarchist, and not a Starbucks window smashing kind.
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn is out as a libertarian.
Yeah, I've
Penn
heard that.
Jillette, Drew Carey. There are a handful of others that you could point to, but none of them. I don't know. I mean, if any of them really showed an interest in political activism or being a part of this campaign or starting their own, if it was on the same platform, I would be enthusiastically supportive. I would love to see, 5 candidates running for the nomination on this platform. I would want to see Democrats and Republicans running on the platform. I would love to see.
That'd be huge. Yeah.
If someone like Bernie Sanders as a phenomenon came back and was running for the Democratic Party nomination in 2020 on the platform of, we're going to cut the government down by 90% in order to get things back to our communities. And I'm a socialist, but I don't want to see it at the federal level. I'd be like, wow. Heck yeah, that's a step in the right direction, and same thing on the Republican side. I frankly, if Republicans had, an ounce of integrity behind the principles they espouse, they would all be running on the platform of dissolving the federal government.
Yeah. And, I've had some hope in Rand Paul, because of his dad. And because, I've always seen him as probably being more libertarian than he lets on, which maybe is a foolish way to look at it. But it was, I don't know. It's disheartening, when like he would get out there in the mainstream media on whatever, even Fox News, CNN, or whatever, and man, people just rail against him so hard. People are terrified, just terrified in the mainstream media of libertarianism.
Understandably so.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's true. But it's like, man, they just try to stop it at all costs, man. But I really hope that it I'm pulling for you for sure. Like we may disagree on some things, but I love the direction that you want to go with limiting federal power and all that kind of stuff. While there are some maybe some uncertainties around it and some things about it that might be scary to a lot of people like me. I don't claim to be incredibly informed. I just I think about things, and I just because it's fun and I'm interested in what's going on and where the country is going, but I don't have like really strong convictions about lots of things really, other than guns and maybe like the drug war and some stuff like that. But I like what you're doing. I like the ideas that you're putting out there for sure.
Well, John, we're doing another national tour. The last time we spoke was I think about 2 years ago, or when I was on your show and I got to come to your home studio.
Yeah, man, you have to do that again if you're going to be in town.
Yeah, well, more importantly, I want to be able to sit down with you off the record and we'll have a conversation about getting you more involved with the campaign. But I hope we'll see you at the event there, and I want your audience to know this is my last new shameless plug, I should say, because I'm going to probably repeat everything here if you'll give me a chance. But
no, go for it, man. There's no reason to be shameful about promoting your stuff, man.
No, I just joked to set people up for the plugs. But we're doing a national tour again this fall. It's going to be 68 stops in about 3.5 months, hitting all the lower 48. And the schedule is on our website at The Freedom Line. It's all together, thefreedomline.com/calendar. You click on calendar and see all of the events. And John, I hope to see you at the one. I don't know which one is closest to you.
Well, I'm close to Nashville. So I guess you're coming to Nashville.
Yeah. We're hitting Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah, we've hit Nashville on every tour.
Yeah, if I'm not out of town or something, I should be able to make it.
Awesome. So, hey, guess what? Featuring John at our event in Nashville. Be there.
Yeah, man. We'll talk like off air. We might be able to figure something out, do something like that.
Awesome.
That'd be cool.
Awesome. Well, if people want to get involved, this is the time. Come out and meet me, meet my team. We especially encourage people right now to be involved in the Libertarian Party and to be delegates for 2018 and set yourself up to be a delegate for 2020. This is a huge opportunity, and I think, John, you've given me every opportunity in this interview, and I really appreciate it to get into all the reasoning behind everything, and share both my passion and my analytical intellectual confidence in what we're doing here in a really in a great way. And I hope your audience appreciated this, and I hope you guys will share this interview. If you got to the end, I guess if you're still listening, it's really just a reminder. If you like this enough to put up with my corny sense of humor for 2 hours, you probably would find the content of this interview worth sharing. So please share it, support this program, and if you want to support this campaign, you can go to thefreedomline.com. You can go to kokeshfornotpresident.com, which you can find it all through there. I'm sure John, as a responsible, organized host, will include all the links here as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. Once the stream video will go up, and then I'll have to, once it's like processed and everything, I'll do that. But yeah, man, I'll throw the links up there. Whenever I do the iTunes upload, I'll do have to do like an introduction and stuff like that. Talk about the people that support the show, whatever. And everything, and I'll remind people of your website and all that. It's thefreedomline.com, right?
Yep. Thank you so much, brother.
Oh yeah, one thing I was going to ask you before you go. People keep there's a bunch of people keep saying in the comments about stolen valor and stuff or whatever, and it seems like I heard other people mention that before, and other shows have been on or whatever. Do you have like a video or something that you can like tell people to go to or whatever? I mean, it's pretty silly.
I have videos on my YouTube channel of me in Iraq. So yeah, eat your heart out.
Yeah, you weren't on vacation. No, you sure you weren't on vacation?
Yeah, I was. I was on vacation in Fallujah in a fighting hole. No, it's really ironic. My most viewed video on YouTube.
I've seen that.
And I've got
talking about
60 million views total, or something. More than 60 with all the videos I've taken down now.
Yeah.
But the most viewed video, it's got like 7 million views, is me telling a joke in a fighting hole during the siege of Fallujah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You want to attack me for that? I say bring it, because none of the attacks are credible.
Yeah.
I've never misrepresented my service in any way. I have all of the evidence and documentation to back everything up, so people can just. It really just reveals.
People love to make that claim.
Sad mentality. Excuse me.
Is that people just love to be like, oh, stolen valor. I mean, anytime I've had a veteran on, it seemed like someone says that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, there's so much insecurity behind that, but it's like a intellectual insecurity in your own worldview, that when any kind of data is presented that challenges your worldview, you have to go, oh, not true, and plug your ears and go, nah, I can't hear you. Like, get real. It's all out there. I don't care. People can attack me all they want for this. I went through it when I was active with Iraq Veterans Against the War. And,
I'm sure.
My DD-214 was published, and they published the one where I got, because when you're a reservist, you get discharged from active duty into the reserves. So you actually get a DD-214. So I have like a end of initial training DD-214 that has no combat on it, because my combat was later.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, look, we got his DD-214. There's no combat on there. And it's like,
yep.
Okay, haters make you famous.
Yep.
Keep it up, guys.
Well, that's part of what one thing that I admire about what you're doing is that you've been on the internet as long or longer than I have, and you know the kind of stuff that you open yourself up to, and I open myself up to a certain amount of things, but you definitely open yourself up to the full. You get the full dose of internet.
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, some of that I know. I've actually seen patterns of comments, like when I was doing the Armed March organization for DC.
Yeah.
On videos about that, there would be the same comment from the same person coming up every 2 hours, and you go and look at their account, and it's like all arts and crafts stuff, nothing about guns or anything political. And you're like, wait, no, okay, something, and is it the government behind it? It's got to be to some degree. I don't know. I don't care to speculate. But a lot of that is artificial on the internet. But if I may tell you, and a little piece of advice to pass on, that someone told me when I first got involved with the Iraq Veterans Against the War, a woman who had been involved in a lot of left-leaning organizing for her entire career, just said, look, Adam, if you're going to be the public face of anything in activism, you're going to have to spend about 10% of your time, just write it off, dealing with totally meaningless drama bullshit.
Yeah.
And you know, you've been around, you know, as a public figure, as a media presenter long enough to know that if you're talking to a crowd of 100 random people, one of them is having the worst day they've had in the last 100 days. One of them is having a bottom percentile day.
Yep.
You know, one of them's got a health issue. One of them got some bad news from a doctor today. One of them's got a parent who just died, or a kid who's sick or in trouble at school. You know, and they're just going to be looking for any excuse.
Yeah, and one of them's just a really angry, terrible person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's going to be mentally unstable people. You know, and you're going to have to develop. I mean, the cliche would be thicker skin, but I think it's just a wiser perspective and a sense of, you know, love and acceptance of the whole experience of being fortunate enough to do this.
I actually like it because, like you said, it does give you thicker skin, makes you more self-aware, and it's weird because by being constantly torn down by people, it actually gives you more confidence because there's like, if I was screwing up at all, I would be hearing about it, you know. So I must be doing okay with that thing that I don't hear about.
Yep. There's that.
Yeah, it's like having friends that aren't afraid to tell you the truth. You know, it's nice. But, anyways, man, I really appreciate you coming on. It's a lot of fun. So hopefully we can hook up whenever you come through town. In October, I think you said, or something like that. But
Nashville.
Yeah.
Nashville.
So we'll do it, man. I appreciate it, and it was fun.
All right. Thanks so much, brother.
Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out in the live chat. So if you got any questions or anything that we didn't answer, I guess, can they, like, do you have what's the best way to contact you if people want to ask you questions? Just comment on your YouTube videos, I guess, or?
Oh, no. I'm not even active on YouTube anymore.
Oh, okay.
The most simple, straightforward, reliable is my direct email, adam@thefreedomline.com.
Okay. Cool, man. All right. Well, we'll see you guys. Appreciate it.